Thanks, Fazla. Good morning, selamat pagi, assalamualaikum to everyone. And thank you very much for coming to this Roots event in Badan Warisan Malaysia under the MHHC. And I'm supposed to introduce myself. My name is Nadge Ariffin, or Ahmad Nadge Ariffin. I'm impatient be up here so that I can also control this. And I need to change my hand here. Okay. And I'm going to share with you what I hope is a very interesting story about two very, very different dynasties or kingdoms which come together and flow through my very veins. And we begin with, of course, China to the north, and then I will go down all the way to the Malay Peninsula and then to the kingdoms of Java. Okay, now in 1644, the year 1644 was a momentous event in the history of China. There was a change of dynasty from the Ming dynasty to the Qing dynasty, the great Qing, Da Qing. And the Qing dynasty is a fairly unique dynasty compared to most of the other dynasties of China. The Qing are not Han Chinese, I think most of you know that, and they are from a tribal group called the Manchu, which is part of a larger group called the Jurchen. And these are a mixed peoples. There are nomads, there are pasture landers, and farmers as well. But they are smaller minority groups across northern China, especially across what is today Mongolia, all the way to, of course, Manchuria, where the name Manchu comes from. And this dynasty, which took over from the great Ming dynasty, was unique because they were such a minority. And when I tell you a bit more of the story with how I came to know this personally, you will see how it was quite an achievement. But the Qing dynasty, next please. Okay, now this is a map of the Qing realm throughout much of the imperial dynasty of the Qing of China. And as you can see, it is pretty much what China is today, with the exception of Mongolia. But the Qing dynasty has to be credited for what is or what makes up the borders of China today, because in history, the Qing dynasty actually doubled the area of China from what the Ming used to be. The Ming dynasty was quite happy to be an empire that ruled much of the main Han areas, and then they exacted tribute from the other areas that were not directly under the Han, for example Malacca, for example Tonkin, Vietnam today, and so on. But with the Qing, that changed. They declared that China was not just a mono-ethnic cultural empire, it was a multi-ethnic empire. And so they expanded to Tibet, Xinjiang, and some of the southern areas which were not under the Ming dynasty earlier. And the Qing ruled for nearly 300 years until, unfortunately, towards the end, of course, we all know, they ran into a lot of problems. There were a lot of kinds of problems. The arrival of Westerners, colonialism, the famines and natural disasters that happened all throughout China towards the end of the Qing dynasty. And it all resulted in a very, very difficult period for the Qing dynasty, for China, and for the Chinese. And to a large extent, that is why there are so many Chinese outside of China. To escape the various difficulties, they migrated in large numbers, and of course some of them are in Southeast Asia right here today. So, towards the end it was really, really very tough. The last emperor, Aisinjo Puyi, was only a boy, and he was forced to abdicate in 1911. But they were able to the imperial family was able to still stay in the Forbidden City imperial palace even after the emperor was no longer the emperor of China. and China had become a republic. But something happened, as history goes, something happened in 1924 in which Feng Yuxiang, a warlord, came and conquered Beijing and evicted the imperial family from the Forbidden City and turned the Forbidden City into a museum. So the entire imperial family, I think all of you watched the very good film, The Last Emperor, would already know some of this, if not having read already the history of China. So the entire imperial entourage moved to Tianjin, and they stayed in Tianjin, but without the support of the government anymore. The imperial family was left for itself. The emperor could not sustain a large retinue of his family members, his extended family, and life became very, very difficult for all those, especially those in the lesser and lesser extents of the imperial family. One by one, the lesser cousins or descendants had to be let go and fend for themselves. So, as history goes, one of these lesser branches of the imperial family, they had to be let go by the imperial household, and they couldn't fend for themselves anymore. So they had a daughter, a little girl of 6 years old. They couldn't feed her anymore, yet they didn't want to, of course, kill her or anything. And the Manchu at that time were already at a very low point. Nobody wanted to be associated with the Manchu because they had already been out of favor. And so one fine day, this little girl of 6 years old was put on a ship. Maybe we go back to the previous. So she was put on a ship from Tianjin right there. The ship went down and stopped at various ports along China's southern coast, and finally made its way down across into the Malay archipelago and landed in Singapore and birthed in Singapore, Singapura. So this 6-year-old girl, she was alone. She had no other family members. Imagine, 6 years old. How old are you, young sir? 10. You're 10, and you wouldn't dream of leaving your good 10-year-old boy on a ship alone, going to a strange land. So that shows how desperate things were in China at that time. And arriving in Singapore, she was alone. She was let go on the dermaga, the wharf. It's not that very clear what happened then, but there was nobody to fend for her. And a kind local gentleman found her there and asked the ship's people, maybe the captain or whoever it was. As I said, because the entire story is not that clear, but the people on the ship told him who she was. And so he took her home, and he and his wife decided to adopt her. Okay. So she is my grandmother. She is a lesser princess of the Qing Dynasty, and ever since then she became a Malay. She was raised as a Muslim, as a Malay, and led a comfortable life. Eventually, she next please. Next. Okay, there's my grandmother. Okay. And that's my mother. Okay. This is one of my cousins. Okay. This is where I mentioned a little bit about the strength of the Manchu people. Okay. She's a Manchu girl, okay, all alone, but when she was found in Singapore, she wasn't crying. She was just patiently waiting there, knowing that something will happen, things will fall into place, because she couldn't do anything anyway. It's no use crying. And indeed, she was adopted by my adoptive great-grandfather there. This reflects a little bit, to an extent, of what the Manchu people were in China. Imagine, at the height of their power, they ruled over an empire consisting of 400 million people. 400 million people. And they were a minority. There were only about 6 to 8 million Manchu, and they were ruling an empire of 400 million people. That's quite an achievement. To put it in perspective, it's as if, just as a rough example, it's as if Malaysia was ruled by just the Iban people, for example. That's how you can imagine the. And so they were very tough people. But of course, towards the end, as you all know, once you get very rich, you get very soft. So towards the end, you got very soft. But individually, she was very tough. And as an example, she was married off at the age of 14. She was married. That was common at that time. It's not cruel. It was very common at that time, and because the system was an extended family, so there was a whole support system for people to get married young. So she was married off at 14, almost 15, to a nice gentleman, Malay gentleman, who already had other wives. She was like the second or third wife. And she was so strong, she wanted to be the only wife, that very soon she had gotten rid of the other wives. Now, when you look back at the story of the Dowager Empress Susi, you can see that same grit, that same determination to get things done your way. That was the Manchu. Okay. But it wasn't cruel. Those who were divorced properly, and in fact, all of them remarried later on. And in fact, they still maintain knowing each other. Not close, of course, but they knew each other because Singapore was so small. Okay, so that is the story of my grandmother, who arrived in Singapore in 1926. Quite late, by the way, compared to many of the other Chinese who came to Southeast Asia, to Malaysia in particular. Okay, let's have the next. So when I went several times to China, meeting people, meeting historians, going to various offices to try and find out, it's quite difficult actually, because you can imagine a 6-year-old girl, she didn't have any, there were no passports at that time, so there's very little record to go by except some confirmation that yes, lesser members of the hero family have been sent out to various places. So we understand there are some in Thailand, not in Indonesia though. Thailand, yes, because I think maybe it was closer and it's a bit easier. Just to merasakan I'm wearing the imperial robes. Okay, next, another story. We go south now to the kingdoms of Java. Okay, we all know the Candi Borobudur, the greatest Buddhist monument on earth, the Prambanan temples, one of the most fantastic Hindu temples. And these were built by the various dynasties of Java. And one in particular stands out today because it still exists, it still is fully recognized constitutionally by the Indonesian Republic, even though Indonesia is a republic and none of the other sultanates are recognized by the Indonesian constitution except that of Yogyakarta. Okay, so as you have it, again, going back through history, the reason Yogyakarta is recognized is because they were very, very active in repelling the Dutch, whereas most of the other sultanates in Indonesia succumbed to the Dutch. At least they were killed off. The dynasties were killed off, not necessarily the members were killed off, but the dynasties were killed off. Some even collaborated with the Dutch, and those were the most quote-unquote hated. But Yogyakarta stands proud as fighting the Dutch. And so, one of the lesser princes of Yogyakarta, his name was Raden Supeni Hasan, and he was a landowner as well. And the Dutch had a very cruel system at that time called in Dutch Kulturstelsel. Kulturstelsel means forced agriculture. In Indonesian, it's the system is called Sistem Tanam Paksa, in which local farmers were forced to plant commodities and sell them to the Dutch at low prices, and the Dutch would of course send them to Europe and make lots and lots of money. So it was a very cruel system, and they wanted more land, more commodities to be able to send back to the Netherlands. So they wanted the land belonging to this lesser prince. So this lesser prince resisted, and he was about to be arrested, so he fled. He was, by the way, already married with a son. He was already married with one boy, one son, and he had to leave them in Yogyakarta. And he fled to Sumatra. In Sumatra, he was still pursued by the Dutch, and so he went across the Straits of Malacca to ended up in Perak. And in Perak, he ended up with a local Perak girl, got married, and had another son. And in Perak, interestingly, this man was very educated, being a member of the royal family of Java, and he could speak several languages. He spoke Dutch, he spoke English, he spoke obviously Javanese, Malay, Indonesian. So it was easy for him to get a job when he was in Perak. And his first job was what is called a kerani nyamuk. Anybody knows what a kerani nyamuk does? Literally, mosquito cloud. Okay, mosquito cloud. Okay, people look puzzled. Basically, it's a health inspector, because he goes around and looks at places to ensure that there are no mosquito breeding places. Okay, so it's a health inspector. But because he spoke all these languages, the British quickly noticed that he had these talents, and they took him to work in the Perak court system. So he became the chief interpreter and registrar in the courthouse of Teluk Intan, Perak. Okay. Now, back in Java, something sad happened. His first wife was very, very beautiful, also a member of the royal family of Java, of Yogyakarta, and she was so beautiful that since she was alone, she was then taken by a Dutchman to become his nyai. Anybody knows what nyai is? Nyai. Yes. So she ended her life as a mistress to a Dutchman. Okay, but that was the way she could survive, because her husband had already had to flee. In fact, one of the ways that the Dutch were able to trace where her husband was because he was sending back money. So through that, you can find out all the intelligence work. So anyway, we have here two brothers, one born in Indonesia and one born in Malaysia. Here they are. This is the elder brother. This is my father. That's my grandmother from Perak. That's me. That's my mom. That's my little sister. So we have two strands here. One from a northern dynasty, another one from a southern royalty. One is my father's side and one is my mother's side. And so they ended up right here in beautiful Malaysia and became a very, very big, happy, extended family. Thank you very much. Okay, move to the next one. It's the last slide. Oh, I forgot. This is me. This is a blancor. It's a typical Javanese headgear. There are many kinds of blancor. This is the type that's from Yogyakarta. Okay, so that's what I'm wearing there. I have re-established contact with my relatives in Indonesia, members of the royal family of Yogyakarta. So we've got, I can't think of any other person who has both connections from the Qing Dynasty all the way down to the royal family of Yogyakarta. So, any questions? Feel free. Or was my story very comprehensive? Yes, sir.
Did you establish any contact with the Chinese side?
Okay, I tried, but it's too difficult. In the first place, admittedly, she wasn't a major princess. She was a lesser. They had a lot of extended family, and she was not living in the Forbidden City. it was known, I did find out that there was an area to the side of the Forbidden City where many of the Manchu-related families lived, and most of them were officials. So it was most likely that her father was an official in the imperial household in the Forbidden City or in the imperial government. But unfortunately, without any paper records, until now, I've not yet been able to, but I'm still trying. So, thank you. Yes, any others?
I have a question.
Yes.
Your grandmother, your Manchu grandmother,
Yes.
what does she remember? Does she remember anything in China?
Okay, thank you. Actually, I did want to mention. Now, one of the first things I did was to grill my grandmother. Grill her. What does she remember? What does she know? What can she tell? Because a 6-year-old girl, but as I kept grilling her and grilling her in a way which even her children didn't. I'm a grandson, the firstborn, the first grandson, first grandchild. She began to remember things. Yes, she remembered that initially they lived in a place which was very big, and she was able to go in and play around in a very vast play area, which when I went to the Forbidden City, I think it's the many courtyards, very big courtyard. I think many of you who have been to the Forbidden City, you would know that. And then she remembers the hard times. She remembers that they all moved. They moved somewhere to a place where there was the sea. She remembers the sea, in Beijing, of course, there was no sea. So that was Tianjin, that was correct. That ties in with what history says. And she remembers that from houses which were very spacious, they had to be cramped in quarters. So that she remembers. And she remembers that things got more and more difficult. There was less and less food for them. Because before that, she remembers that people brought food to them. It was, and I think that was when the imperial kitchens were still full, so you can just go and food would be served to people who worked in the Forbidden City and their families, which you can still see the communal kitchens in the Forbidden City are still there. So, and finally, she remembers that she was put on a ship, and she didn't know that she was not going to see her family again. That was something that was hard on her. She thought she was going on a trip and she was coming back. And in fact, that could have been the case. It could have been the case that she was supposed to be sent somewhere temporarily, but ended up in Singapore because of a misconnection. Somebody was supposed to pick her up, didn't pick her up, something. But according to the ship's people who talked to the gentleman who eventually adopted her, they just said that there were so many people on the ship, they assumed that she was taken care of by somebody, and that when they reached Singapore, somebody would pick her up. That's what they thought. In those days, it's not like today where you have full manifests and everything's all well recorded. So, as fate has it, she ended up in Singapore alone. Okay. Do you want to take another question? Just a quote that I use in my while waiting for the next person to come up. It is a quote that I use in my lectures on history. I do love lectures on history and heritage. Sejarah yang benar adalah pautan akar dari mana kita boleh lebih jauh menjalar meneroka masa depan. And of course, I think most of you would understand that, but for those who may not speak Malay, history, or correct history, is a link. It is a route that from which you can spread yourself and move forwards into the future. So this is my own quote from many years ago, but today it really is very appropriate for the roots, akar, that we are talking about today.